Welcome to episode 9 of the Who is Who program, brought to you by the Information Systems Community of Practice by the Project Management Institute, PMI. These series of interviews were designed to bring you closer to the lives of some remarkable project managers, which you hopefully will find useful and insightful. On the last episode, we had Thomas Juli with us, and today we are pleased to introduce you to Peter Taylor, best-selling author of the book, The Lazy Project Manager. My name is Angela Lummel, and together with Luis Seabra, we are your hosts today, and we're happy to welcome our guest today, Peter Taylor. Hello, Peter.
Hi there. How you doing?
Welcome to the program. Yeah, thank you. Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you.
So I'll be handing off to Luis.
Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Let me start by asking you, how did you start being lazy?
Well, you know, I think my parents might suggest that I was always lazy, but I'll tell you, it came about, and I tell people this when I do my presentations, it came about because it was an insult from my boss, my manager at the time. We were talking about what to do next. We'd worked together in some very large engagements. I'd headed up a PMO for him in 2 organizations. And he was talking to me about what next, and I said, you know, I'd love to continue doing what I do. I love project management, but I'd also like to do more speaking, and I'm beginning to think about writing a book. And he said, I think you'd be really good at that, but you know, you're one of the laziest people I've ever met. And I was quite upset to start with, because I thought he liked me, but he was teasing me, and he was saying, no, I think that's good, but you know, and it's kind of that comment about the way I work. It kind of fitted, and so by bringing the idea I had for the Project Manager book with the Lazy together, the Lazy Project Manager was born.
And that was great. Was that your latest project management discovery, the Lazy Project Manager, or did you find some new stuff afterwards?
Oh, I found lots of stuff afterwards. I mean, I think the, you know, when the book came about, I was very lucky. You know, I got a publishing deal quite quickly, quite easily, in a very lazy style, which is great. I was allowed to write the book completely how I wanted to write it, and I think that's what made a difference, really. So I think my biggest discovery as a result of that is the combination of the popularity of the book and the wonderful network of people that I've now got around the world. You know, every project manager I've reached out to ask for advice or input or comment or help on future books and opportunities has responded wonderfully. And you know, I think that's probably the biggest pleasant surprise that I've come across as a result of that. That there are just so many people out there willing to help out and contribute to everything to improve project management generally.
Well, the fact is that you are able to engage people very smoothly. I remember I watched the presentation you gave maybe in Milan, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. But you gave a pin for people to use that said I am a lazy project manager. I was to bring the pin today, but I'm sorry, I forgot.
I'll tell you a story about that. So the first, it was I think it was 2010 in Amsterdam at the PMI EMEA Congress. It's the first time I presented a lazy project manager, and I tell you, I was really, because the book was only just out, and I was really worried that nobody would turn up to the session. And I thought, well, how can I promote this? How can I market this a little bit? And I came up with these ideas because I thought if I had some badges, some pins, I could give them to people, and they might come along to the session just out of more interest. And what was amazing, I not only had a full house, a full room. I think we had about 120 people in the room. I also got an encore, and those badges. I think I've now given away something like 15,000 of those badges at the end of my presentations, and people loved them. And the following year, I did another presentation, which was called Project Management Superstar, and there I had a yellow badge, which says I am a PM Superstar. And the third year, I didn't go to the EMEA Congress. I went to Washington instead, and I had people phoning me up saying, "Where are you? We want our new badge." So these badges, these pins, are just incredibly popular.
But they work. I can tell you that. And I can tell you that I have the Project Manager Superstar pin and the Lazy Project Manager, and I wore both on my badge on the following congresses. So they do work.
Fantastic.
That was really nice. What drives you to make this kind of what drives you making these initiatives? Writing a book, starting your own company. What is the purpose of all this for you?
The purpose of all this is, well, I'm having a lot of fun, that's for sure. So the book came about because of a desire, as I said, to speak, really. And, you know, I was given some advice that if you have a book, it's a very good, it's kind of the best business card you can have. It's also kind of expected when you go on the speaking circuit to have a book. And I had this idea anyway. The book itself was, you know, I mean, you said at the beginning very nicely about some remarkable project managers, and I think myself as a very ordinary project manager, and I believe the popularity of the book, because I think it is one of the best-selling project management books ever. It's the popularity is because it is very ordinary in the sense that, I mean, there are some very grand projects out there, and I admire the project managers, the program managers that oversee these incredible, complex projects and programs that take place. But I speak very much from a fairly, you know, typical, standard, moderately complex project world. And I think the combination of the honesty in the book, the humor in the book, it's not very long either, and you can cheat, you don't have to read the whole thing. And the fact that the case studies are really brutally honest. It is where I got something completely wrong but learned an important lesson. I think that in itself has provided the foundation for its popularity. And it is from that book, and of course I've written many other books since, but it really is from that book that's given me the opportunity to, in the last 2 years, to move into the world of independent trainer, consultant, speaker, and continue writing, etc. So I have to put it all down to that little book, 30,000 words of The Lazy Project Manager.
Well, as far as my opinion goes, the success of the book lies on presenting a very simple and basic idea about project management in in a wonderful way. The stories, the context that you put things like the Monty Python dinosaur. It's really wonderful. But we'll get back to the Lazy Project Manager in a while. I would like to continue on books. I bet you read some books about project management as well. Mm-hmm. What was the last book that you read and that you really enjoyed?
So this is an interesting one for me now, because I read for pleasure, and I read for work and for business and related to project management. And more these days, through the success I've enjoyed, I get asked to review books for people. So actually, if you ever ask me what is the last book I read, it's probably going to be a book I've been reviewing for someone. So this time around, the last book, or the book I am currently reading and enjoying, is a book by a lady called Susan Madsen. And Suzanne's written a book called The Power of Project Leadership. She's writing a book for Kogan Page, and Kogan Page are my current publishers as well. So we have something in common. We've been comparing notes on working with this particular publisher. And it is looking at the aspect of leadership regarding projects. And Susan's got a nice style. I like it. It's what I term as a sort of a soft, supportive, but very practical approach. She talks about the seven keys to successful project leadership. So that's the book I'm reading right now. Prior to that, I've had a whole series of books, and I think I find something enjoyable in all of them. Some are very different to others. Some are storytelling type books. Others are more theoretical. But I think there's value from all of them. I enjoy all of them, and I try and read them in a constructive way and supply reasonable and fair comments on them. And I'm probably going to get deluged by people wanting me to review books now, but it's a good way. Hey, and they're free that way as well, so that's a plus.
Yeah, that's really great. So tell me, how does someone starting from an IT background, you started working on business intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
How do you end up writing books on project management and delivering those wonderful presentations that you do, and coaching and PMOs. How does that happen?
In small steps, and you know, so I mean, yeah, very quickly the journey I went through. I mean, my background is primarily working for software houses, primarily working as a consultant, stroke project manager for these organisations, and so I started life. I mean, I started out many years. I worked in the what is the ERP arena these days, enterprise planning sort of an organisation. Then I spent a number of years, nearly 11 years in the business intelligence world and in other software companies. And I've also worked for KPMG. Behind it all, for the most part, has been project management of some form. So I started off as a project manager leading very, very simple, short-term projects, grew in their complexity. Then eventually I got involved in developing methodology and training people and developing project managers. Eventually I became responsible for a project management community, and that in itself evolved into what you might be recognized as a PMO these days. Before I finally moved to organizations such as Siemens, where I started a PMO from scratch, where we ended up with 115 project managers across 13 countries in Europe, Middle East and Africa, running something like 300 projects. So the whole thing has grown gradually over time, as most people's careers grow and you take more and more responsibility. And I think it was having the ability to adapt and grow and develop throughout that whole thing has sort of given me the confidence of being able to now speak in front of other people and to share the knowledge I have and the knowledge I gain from other people, because I begin, you know, more and more these days I collaborate with other people when I write books. So, you know, I think two things. I think it's gradual, step by step. You've grown up to the point I am now, and I guess there is something in me that gives me the confidence to stand up in front of 2,000 people and hopefully deliver what is an entertaining and informative session.
So basically, what happened was a sequence of accidents, right?
Yeah, well, controlled accidents. Some of them more accidental than others.
Okay. Starting your own company, that's what you do now for a living. It was a big step. What drove you in that direction?
I think, well, one was a desire and two was an opportunity. So the desire was kind of always there in recent years about, well, could I do this? Is this something I can make money out of? You know, I began speaking and continued writing for a number of years while still having a full-time job, and that was great, but it had limitations because, you know, I was picking some nice speaking events to go to and opportunities, but turning down as much as I was accepting. So there was kind of like a belief that there was work to be had there. And secondly, it was, you know, I reached a point in time where I'd finished consulting inside one organization on a global PMO, and I honestly thought, well, it's now or never, you know, and if I don't give this a go, I will probably regret it, almost certainly regret it. But if I do give it a go and it doesn't work, I can perhaps go back and do another PMO job or whatever. So that's kind of it. When I describe it to people, it's in the cartoons, you know, when you see Wile E. Coyote running off the edge of a cliff and then running like mad in midair. It felt like that when I first did it. It was like, oh my goodness, what have I actually done? No one's going to pay me come the last Friday of the month. I'm going to have to go and find the work. But for the most part, it's been a great learning experience, you know, and if for the most part, it's kind of worked. So, but please, if you're out there and you're looking for a trainer speaker, feel free to contact, because it's always good to have a little bit more work.
But it's a really big change from Siemens to your company in size, in the kind of contacts that you have. I mean, one of your last jobs on Siemens was to provide certification for 1,000 project managers.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't happen anywhere. For instance, from Portugal, where I'm at, there is no company here that has 1,000 project managers. So.
Yeah, and sadly, I haven't managed to find another one that's got 1,000 project managers who'd like me to come in and work for them at the moment. I mean, it's hard, you know, Siemens, it's just a huge organization, so you couldn't have more of a contrast, really. But I've worked for governments, I've worked for non-government organisations, I've worked for private organisations. I've worked in a number of industries in the last couple of years: banking, in IT, in construction, in pharmaceuticals. So there's always an opportunity, and no, it isn't on the scale of what happened inside Siemens, of which I was part of. But I think without the Siemens experience and the other experiences, I wouldn't have the confidence to do what I do. And the fact that these days I might be only working with an organisation to help develop and train 50 or maybe even 100 project managers, the principles are the same. And so everything I've done in the past helps me now.
Okay. Would you like to explain just a little bit about the concept of the lazy project management? So people that actually haven't read the book or watched you present the topic, they know what you're talking about?
Yeah, of course. And they haven't. Yes, I mean, I think there was a quote that there were something like 16 million project managers around the world, or project management resources. And no, they haven't all bought a copy of the book yet. So I guess there are one or two that need to explain it. The lazy project manager, I am not talking. And the downside to this, writing a book like this, is that I have teenage boys, 3 teenage boys, and they all use this against me. When I tell them to do something, they say, "No, Dad, we're being lazy." What I mean is productive lazy. It is working smarter, not harder. And the book came about through 2 sources of inspiration. One was my own experiences on working on projects and finding a better way to be more effective on projects. I was like many young project managers. I involved myself in far too much. I got involved in every meeting, every discussion. I had to be part of every decision. I hadn't learned the art of delegation or trust or anything like that. But secondly, in the Siemens PMO, I could see half of the project managers were being reasonably successful, working a fairly normal week. Projects go up and down, of course, so in their time, but generally speaking, working a fairly normal 40-hour week. And the other half were being no more successful, but were working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And there was a behavioural difference. By looking at that behavioural difference, you could uncover where they were, in my view, going wrong. And so the book is all about setting the right foundation for project success, managing and leading the project the right way, engaging with your project sponsor, communicating in an effective way, controlling change, about how at this point to be more trusting of your project team during the middle part of the project, and for you to be primarily proactive, to go around checking things are okay, but being able to respond quickly when things weren't. And finally, to close the project off in a good way, which is not just the mechanics of shutting the project down. It is also about that whole lessons learned, retrospective experience, value added at that point in time. So the book follows a fairly typical life cycle of a project. It focuses on 9 key areas, and the whole theme is really about, as I said, productive laziness, working smarter and not harder. Right.
In contrast of more complex stuff like the Monte Carlo simulation, you present something really simple, really common sense, basically, and develop. You put evidence on your book how people actually can take advantage of all that, and that is really great.
That was the idea. Make it very practical, make it useful, and of course, as you said, there's Monty Python, there's dinosaurs, there's field marshals from the Prussian army, there are Italian economists, everything you'd expect not to see in a project management book.
Right, and it goes very well together. The other book that you wrote that it's actually a reference in project management, I think, is Leading Successful PMOs.
Yep.
Would you like to start on the topic, because I really want to go into the successful part, but I wanted to first explain a bit of how these books how they sorry.
How it came about? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, so I mean, apart from the Lazy Project Manager gave it a platform for success, which does help. It makes it easier to find another publisher, and I wanted to write about PMOs because I've been involved in PMOs. The last one where I had a full-time job was my third PMO, which is, quite a depth of experience compared to a lot of people. And I wanted to focus on leading PMOs because the thing I found interesting was you see an increase in demand for heads of PMOs, PMO managers, PMO directors, whatever, and yet the actual knowledge and experience out there is not so high. And so leading successful PMOs is written from the point of view of, first of all, giving a language to describe a PMO, because what does PMO even mean? What does it stand for? I mean, that's confusing in itself. But having defined that, how can you describe PMOs? And I talk about models and types and all the rest of the maturity of PMOs, etc. And then from the successful point of view, I kind of took the 360-degree approach. I spoke to existing PMO managers. I spoke to the people who manage those PMO managers. I spoke to C-level executives who sanctioned and sponsored PMOs. I looked in the marketplace about companies that were recruiting PMO managers. I put all this together to try and filter down the essence of what made a PMO leader successful or not. And I was also blessed with some great case studies from organizations around the world, such as ESPN, for example, who talk about their own PMO experience, because you can learn something from every individual experience. And so, in essence, that's what the book's all about.
You focused on the different kinds of PMOs. Did you find that there is a common there are common leadership skills required for a small and a big PMO, a more a PMO devoted more just to projects, or those that are involved in project and portfolio and program management also? Is there a common? Is there a common?
I think there are common. I think they are common across all PMOs. I think the difference being what has more dominance than others. So, for example, you might say that being an independent leader was quite an important skill, because people were very honest. They said, well, we've sanctioned the PMO inside the organization, we support it, but actually we've never run a PMO, nor have we particularly got strong project background, so therefore we're trusting of the PMO head, the leader, to take that responsibility and be, if you like, an independent self-starter, etc. Now, if you're talking about a PMO that sits and supports a major program, for example, then that particular leadership dominance skill is probably less important than other aspects. Another aspect or skill of a PMO leader is to develop the relevant PMO for the organization at this point in time. I talk about not being afraid to be unique, because every PMO that I've led and every PMO I've coached or supported has been different in some way, because it's relevant to the organization at this point in time. So I think the skills generally are common, but there's probably more focus on one or two of those skills depending on what the PMO is doing inside the organization.
Which leads us to the next keyword on the book title. That is, what is a successful PMO? Mm-hmm. Is that easily defined?
Well, I think one definition of it is it's a PMO that still exists, because there's a lot of PMOs that don't survive too long, and there are some case studies out there. So if you're still existing in that in the world, in the organization, you must be doing something right, hopefully. A successful PMO is one that finds the right bridge between project-based activity, project health, successful delivery of projects, and the strategic intentions of the organization. So a PMO can be successful at a lower level inside the organization, but the aspirations should be to eventually evolve the PMO into some sort of enterprise level PMO, I believe, for it to have any real longevity inside an organization. When you look at the statistics of PMOs that are being cancelled, they tend to sit low in the organization, within one department, maybe purely IT based or something like that. When you look at the successful PMOs, the ones that are out there and gaining traction and sort of, you know, secure in their future. It's where they have authority and have connection to the strategic direction of the organization, and then translate that strategy into projects. So the higher up the food chain you go, you know, like in many things, the stronger your sense of success can be, I think, and your success in real terms can be.
But naturally, you associate a successful PMO with successful projects.
Which in turn delivers successful business, yes.
Well, but that's another complex question to answer. What is a successful project for you?
Not simple. So I mean, project success is a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, you know, we all know the triple constraint, the iron triangle, but the reality is the business I'm from, software industry. I mean, if it was purely about that for success, then yeah, there really wouldn't be a software industry, because it's never that simple. You know, I do a presentation which is, you know, called the Journey of Expectation Management, and it's all about that coming together of a supplier and a customer and finding the right way through the early part of the project. And project success is just not about delivering on time, to budget, to scope, and obviously with a good quality level. It's more than that. It's supporting the business needs. It's having that flexibility and adaptivity, if you like, to that. It's about operating in a particular, you know, political environment, of course. It's about ensuring it's aligned to the strategic intentions of the organization at this point in time. It's, you know, it's about culture. It's about so many things. It just isn't a simple answer. And I think, you know, a project manager who has a very simplistic view on this is going to be quite upset one day by the fact they may have delivered their project perfectly as far as they're concerned, and yet the outcome is not a positive one because it isn't what the business needs right now. So it's a very complicated thing, and we could spend another 2 or 3 hours talking about it. But success just needs to be thought about in a broader sense, I think.
But would you agree with the more mainstream definition that considers that projects should only care about delivering the outputs they're intended to deliver, and then some other organization, department, whatever, like a program, should worry about incorporating those outputs into the business?
No, I strongly disagree. I think, you know, a project manager needs, you know, whether or not, and I work with some organizations that have that demarcation, and there's nothing wrong with that. And in some cases, it's the PMO who takes responsibility. You say sometimes it's the portfolio or program management, but it doesn't matter. You know, one of the weaknesses I see in projects is often where the project manager and the project team have no real understanding of what the project's about, in the sense of what benefits is it trying to deliver. And without that appreciation, that visibility of purpose, as I call it, they can't necessarily comment or contribute back. I mean, you know, a good mature project manager will go and challenge if they feel that the project is, you know, heading the wrong way, is not contributing, or it could offer more. I think they have a responsibility to go back and raise that. And so, without that, you know, they may not take responsibility for those business benefits, but they need to understand what the perceived benefits are, and they need to have the ability to have a comment on those and to make suggestions and proposals back to the business.
And that basically requires for the project manager to be able to focus on the activities that he's controlling to deliver whatever the project is delivering. And at the same time he's focusing, he has to be aware of the environment and the greater objectives of his project, or the outputs of his project, and how they are going to be used. Do you find that companies in general approve this kind of responsibility delivered to the project managers, that he is responsible for delivering the outputs of the project, and somehow responsible also to incorporate those results into the business?
Well, I think there's a gap. I mean, I think there's a weakness. I mean, some organizations recognize that, some don't. My challenge, and I talk a lot about this, is that, and my latest sort of rant is that that executives are failing projects, not projects aren't failing executives or the business. It's a sense that there's this vacuum of I talk a lot about the campaign for real project sponsors, about having that capability of doing that important role. It's a sponsor and it's the project manager that come together in a perfect partnership, ideally, that can oversee the project delivery and also oversee the delivery of the business benefits, with support from the PMO perhaps, or portfolio office or whatever. And all of that, if it works well and delivers what the business requires. The trouble is, we're currently in the age of the accidental project sponsor, for example, where organisations aren't taking this seriously, and therefore they're putting their projects at risk, and they're putting pressure on the project managers, and they are risking failure of delivering benefits. And so that's why I argue at the moment that the executives are failing projects. It's not the project managers that are failing projects or anything like that. So there's kind of there's just a need for real focus and maturity at that level.
I heard you. I think it was on your presentation when I had the privilege to hear you talking about the Lazy Project Manager, that you at one point you were talking about governance and linking certification and training to revenue in the end run. How is that possible? How can you map training to a company's revenue?
Well, I mean, part of what you do when you head up a PMO is to constantly justify what's going on. And the honest answer to that is you can't, but you can look at the trends, you can look at the investment of effort, and you can look at improvement. So, when I talk about PMOs, when I present on PMOs, I use the Siemens case study a lot. And in there, we always tracked the value add to the project managers and the value add to the organization. So we looked at overall project health. Now, underlying all of that were a whole series of initiatives, one of which was a big program of investment of training in our project managers and our consultants, along with the development of a robust, methodology to start with, a framework in the end, a flexible framework for people to work to help improve them through tools and templates and guidelines, etc., for their project activity, along with training in soft skills, etc. Now, put all that together, and we could clearly demonstrate a significant improvement in overall project health, which, for us as a commercial organisation, offered a significant improvement on the bottom line, i.e., money. So, could you extract and say, by training a project manager, we improved the revenue by X dollars a year? Not specifically, but by putting it all together, you can certainly say, by doing all of these things that the PMO is leading, that we saw a significant improvement in project health, which delivered additional revenue, happier customers, greater return on investment, quicker to sign up and purchase additional license, etc., etc. So it's done that way.
So writing books, working for such a big company as Siemens, delivering those fabulous presentations that you do. Tell me, in the midst of all this, what was your biggest achievement within project management?
Well, I think I can go to. I think there are so many answers to that. I mean, I have to say the Lazy Project Manager was an unexpected but delightful success and achievement, and that's given me the platform for everything I've done in the last 5 years, because the Lazy Project Manager is now 5 years old. But I think prior to that was just surviving in project management. I mean, I was 5 years into project management before anybody called me a project manager, and 8 years into it before anybody sent me on a training course. So somehow I got something or enough right to survive in those early days. And most recently is, with the if you like, the authority, what's the right word, with the success of the Lazy Project Manager, it's put me in a position to connect to so many people around the world and to begin to share knowledge and connect other people to other people. And that's, that's a great blessing in being able to do that, of talking to some great people, sharing some ideas, the various communities, LinkedIn, PMI, everything that's out there, blogs, articles, podcasts, all of that. It's just been great. And so, but they're each are built on each other. If I hadn't survived as a project manager in the early days, I would never have written or had the experience to write Lazy Project Manager. If I hadn't written the Lazy Project Manager, I wouldn't be here talking to people like yourself, or having all the other opportunities. So again, it's been an interesting path.
Can I just share something with you guys from the What is a Successful Project Manager? One of my previous manager told me, if people like you, you're not a good project manager. So I don't think necessarily, Peter, that would align with your lazy project management concept. I was just wondering, what would you reply to a person, or if your manager told you that? If people like you, you're not a good PM.
I think I would qualify it slightly. I think if people like you 100% of the time, perhaps you're not a good project manager. There are times you've got to be tough. There's no doubt about that. There's times you've got to, people, and that's part of being, retaining control. Does that mean you have to be popular? Probably not. Does that mean you will have their respect at the end of the project and be popular through that? I think you can do. So, if you're a project manager that doesn't care about people, if you're a project manager who just focuses on the mechanics of a project delivery, will happily, extract the maximum from a project team and then move cheerfully on to the next project, not caring what happens to them. I don't think that's particularly sustainable myself inside an organisation, and it's not where I'd like to be. But equally, can you be the most popular, lovable person on a project all the time? Probably not. There are times when you're going to have to. It's important to have a degree of objectivity and authority and distance occasionally from your project team members, but not to overdo it. I think it's a balance.
Yeah, it's always a fine line to walk. Yeah, you have to be pushed to a certain point and make people want you to work with on another. Yeah, request you as a PM on another project. That's, I think, yeah.
Well, the only time I've been like that really was I spent a year and a half or so as a project recovery specialist, and there's just a technique to doing that where you don't go in to win friends in the early stages of doing that. You go in to uncover the facts of what's going wrong, to challenge some of the assumptions, to grab control in a very short period of time. And then there's a certain approach and style to doing that, and I learned from a pretty good mentor on that. Because your job is short and sharp and to the point, and you need to turn things around for the greater good of the project, etc. But I don't think that's necessarily a style you can use when you're starting the project, and you're going to see it through all the way to the end.
Yeah. I was wondering, Peter, you have worked in the consultancy field for many years now, and during your workshops and training sessions, what is the main concern that keeps coming up from project managers mainly, where they see their deficiencies, what doesn't work well, what they complain to you, what could go better, what's their biggest pain point, so to speak?
Well, the first question is usually, how can I be lazy? But once you get past that one, what they talk about, interestingly, and it is reflected in a new book I've got coming out, which is called Real Project Management, and this is focused on what attracts young project managers to our profession, and secondly, what do they see as the most significant challenges out there? It doesn't mean they're not, it doesn't mean they're necessarily overly worried about them, but they just see these as challenges. And it's interesting that these are fairly common, and the relevant ones right now are, people talk a lot about the sort of increased complexity of projects. They talk about the virtualization of projects, the fact that you're using global remote resources. You can't go through the normal team building approaches because you never get everybody in one room, and that has all of the the issues of culture and language and time, etc. They are worried about the executive support, sponsorship, as being a weak area. They recognise that. They recognise time has always been a pressure point for a project manager, but they recognise if you like, when you do projects these days, more is expected from, if you're lucky, the same, and sometimes more is expected from less. And the last area really is one of communication. Not that communication hasn't always been the #1 skill of a successful project manager. It's linked to the virtual world that we live in. It's the fact there are generational differences in communication styles. There are an ever-increasing means to communicate with people, and I come across project managers who are just, they're wearing themselves out by reporting through the traditional means, the standard means, etc., but also trying to keep up pace with the modern social tools, etc., and they're repeating themselves over and over again in different forms. So put all that together, they're the kind of the main areas that people focus their questions on, and that is the modern world of project management. It's a complex world, a time-driven world, a world of complex and varied communication techniques and styles. It's a world where there is a weakness in sponsorship support, I feel, and obviously because of geographical, political, business and commercial reasons, projects are ever expanding their reach around the world and are using resources and subject matter experts from around the world, and that has to be handled by a project manager. So my first project, everybody was in one room, one office location, and even then I found it challenging and difficult. These days it's hard to find a project that works anything like that.
Right, yeah, I would certainly agree with you on the virtualization part. That it's, yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, most of my team members I never met in person, so it's harder to motivate your team also, like in terms of motivation. You can't just simply walk over to a desk or share a piece of cake or something. So
it's really difficult.
My challenge as well.
Actually, I mean, you said you interviewed Thomas Julier recently, and we spoke at a conference very recently in Germany. But after that, at the end of that conference, we were hosting Birds of a Feather tables, and I was lucky enough to get to host the managing cross-cultural communication, which naturally led into virtualization discussion. We were the most popular table in the room, and it wasn't me; it was a topic for sure. And we had a really good conversation on that, and some great ideas around that. But everybody recognised it as, this is just current. This is what it's going to be like moving forward. You can't go through the norm. Well, you have to go through, but it's not the same application of the Tuckman, forming, storming, norming, performing type growth of team behaviour. You have to find new ways of working with people. You have to have those virtual coffee sharing, cake sharing type events. You have to find ways to communicate with people, and they came up with some great tips and some techniques, and it was a good session. But I think it's something that people really are challenged by.
Right. Yeah, that's good to hear. That session met with such big number of people.
We were too deep around the table. It was great.
Yeah. So any quick advice for any new PMs that are starting new in the profession that you would lash out to them, give to them?
Well, there's an article out there, and it's called Project Management Green Beans, and I do talk about this. And I think the sort of tips I talk to people about are, when you start out in project management, I was thrown into the deep end, and that was okay way back in time. But the problem is that's not okay now. So, firstly, do your preparation through training developments. If you're going through a degree course, fantastic. But just remember that for the most part is theory. So when you move on to the practical side of things, you get your first job in an organisation. Find what I call is a kind of a safe haven for working. Is there a nice supportive community? Can you get a role inside of PMO in a supportive role? Can you get your first project experience as a supporting personnel rather than leaving it? Take those opportunities to learn from others. And I think the second thing is, and I was kind of really lucky. I had a kind of mentor. The guy wasn't. When I look back, he wasn't the most proficient at projects necessarily, but he had a very considered approach. And so he was there where I could go and ask questions. Or occasionally he came and had a chat with me, and we'd have a coffee and talk. If you can find someone who can just be there to answer your questions in a sensitive way, may not have all the answers, but could connect you to someone who might be able to help you, having that sort of mentor is a wonderful thing to have. So, first of all, find a safe place to learn, and secondly, if you can find someone who will mentor you, then those two things are really going to help you. And don't try and bite off more than you can chew on day one. You know, gain your project experience in a controlled way.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The mentoring system or the buddy system, which is something that we have introduced in my last PM job, so that certainly helped any new people coming on board. Yeah,
and it's fun to do. I mean, if you're an experienced project manager and you don't have a buddy system like that inside your organization, trust me, talk about it and see if you can make it happen, because it's a very rewarding experience, and you know, I'm much needed.
Because it's not something that you just learn and then you are able to do it. It's not like learning how to multiply, where you listen to someone explaining to you, you learn it, and then you can apply it. When you learn about project management, you have to practice it.
Absolutely. A good analogy I use, my eldest son is learning to drive right now, and he mechanically was very good. I talked to his driving instructor, because I'm paying someone else to take that risk, and I spoke to his driving instructor, and he said he's very good. He's very coordinated. He's really quite competent on the mechanics of changing the gears and controlling control. But now he has to learn to drive, and learning to drive is about getting out there, having the experience, coming across the difficult situations, learning to deal with surprise activities from other motorists, etc. And so when he came back from his first lesson, he was very confident that he would pass his test in no time. When he went out for his second and third, he came back and he was less confident, because he realized he had so much to learn from a practical point of view. So I think it's very similar. You know, you can learn the theory, you can have perhaps an easy ride to begin with, but there's challenges out there, and it's much easier to have support, help, and take it in easy steps.
Okay. Is there something that many people know about you? What, like, from your work experience, consultancy, or from your background that you want to share with us today?
In public, yeah. So the one thing I will share, which I believe is unique, is based on my presentational experience and the fact I try to put fun into everything, I now offer something which I think, you know, conferences have missed. So you go to great conferences and there's always great sessions during the day, presentations, etc. But in the evening, the entertainment is good, but it's never related to project management. And so I actually offer a project management stand-up comedy routine. It's proving that project management can be fun and funny, and I've not yet come across anybody else who does that. So there you go, there's something special. Book me for your next event, 30 to 40 minutes of fun.
Think about that, yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I'm not sure, Luis, how are we doing on time? Or are we close to the hour yet? Or
yes, we are. We can start closing with the quick questions and wrap it up. Do you want to go with that, Angela?
Yeah, let me see. We covered some of them already. Yeah, where can people find out more information about being lazy? You mentioned the 2 books, Peter, or like anything?
Yeah, so I mean, www.thelazyprojectmanager.com. So lazyprojectmanager.com. People can find all of my contact details there, and connections to my other websites, whether that be on PMOs or anything else like that. So that's a great way to start, or to just connect to me on LinkedIn and follow the links from there.
Okay.
I have a quick question for you, nevertheless. We started with the Lazy Project Manager and how you started being lazy. If I decided to start being lazy today, what would be your recommendation to me?
Well, I think, actually this is quite a common question I get from people, is where can I start being lazy? I mean, the first thing is, you need to understand the environment you're working in. I mean, you can't suddenly stop working or working from home or stop communicating with people. You need to do this in respect of the environment, the culture that you work in. But I think communication is a great place to think about it. Think about, it's kind of analyze what you do during the day in forms of communications, everything from email to meetings, etc. And then find the one you spend most time on and find a way to potentially just reduce that by maybe 10%. So again, small steps, and I talk a lot about email behavior and the strengths and weaknesses of email in the book, for example. But look at where you spend most of your time. That's the first thing, and then look at that time and seeing if you can improve the means of communication, be more effective, or combine some communication, or something which is free up a small percentage of that time you've got. And based on that kind of success, then you'll gain the confidence to try and make other small improvements. It's not a big thing. It's a gradual thing over a period of time.
Right. Who would you like to see next on these interviews?
Interesting. Yeah, there's several actually. So one of my favourite presenters is a guy called Stephen Carver, who works for Cranfield University, a brilliantly entertaining presenter. Another of my favourite guys from the States is a guy called Rick Morris, who wrote Stop Playing Games. Again, a great character. If I was to pick one which I think is very different, there's a guy called Gary Nelson, or Gazza Nelson, as he's also known. And the thing I like about Gary, he's down in Australia, straight New Zealand, bounces between the two. And what I love about Gary is he's written a series of books for children that are project management adventure books about building a treehouse, a scary project for Halloween, etc. And I love this because this is a great entrance, it's sort of opening for the future project managers. So, a great speaker, a great character, and a great novel idea in the last guy, Gary Nelson. So this three I'd love to hear, and I think people would enjoy them as well.
Great. Angela,
so that's lazy for you. I've given you the next 3 sessions.
Angela, would you like to? Is there something else you'd like to add or ask Peter? Angela?
I think we got it covered from our mindset questions that we laid out.
Okay, so we can wrap up. I just wanted to thank you, Peter, for your time and your insightful comments on laziness.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you also very much from my side, Peter.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much, both of you.
Would you like to wrap up the interview, Angela?
Sure, yeah, let's just wrap this up. Yeah, we just to the PMI community, we hope that you enjoyed this interview with Peter Taylor, brought to you by the Information Systems Community of Practice by the PMI. This is your host, Angela Lummel, and along with Luis Seabra, and we'll be back next month to introduce you to another remarkable project manager. Please note that PDUs will be granted. Please check the ISCOP website soon on how PDUs can be claimed and will be posted. Again, thanks a lot, Peter, for your time.